Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills with our custom grill for the 2024 and newer Toyota Tacoma. This version of the grill requires no cutting and no drilling, and I'm super excited to show you how all this works. I put a lot of precise engineering into this build, so let's get started. These grills are a full replacement for the factory grill and are made from a solid piece of stainless steel that's been laser cut and powder coated. You don't need to worry about rusting on these, and we plan to offer a slotted pattern in a similar configuration to this, as well as other designs in the future. Also included is going to be some mounting hardware, and this will be a single bracket for the center, 4 open-ended brackets, a couple of flat closed brackets, 4 slightly bent brackets, some big brackets for the sides, 6 T-shaped brackets, as well as long T20 Torx bolts, short T20 Torx bolts and washers and nuts, long T25 Torx bolts, washers and nuts, short hex bolts and nuts, a bunch of thick plastic spacers, some angled wedges, and a few split washers. And the tools that I'll be using are a screwdriver that can interchange bits, and an 11/32 open-ended wrench, a ratchet with a 7/16 inch socket as well as a 3/8 inch deep well socket, and lastly, a T20 Torx, a T25 Torx, and a 5/32 inch hex bit. To make this install easy to follow, we've bagged up all of the hardware in separate bags and color-coded them. The color of the bags will coordinate to some special pop-ups in the corner of this video, which will indicate what tools I'm using for each step. These 2024 Tacoma grills require the bumper to be removed. I linked in the description a great step-by-step tutorial on how to get caught up to this point. Also, here's a great visual guide as to which colored bags will go to which spots on the bumper. Let's dive into the top center with the clip from bag A. The center of the clip will have a hole which goes around the center post, and the hole on one end will correspond to the hole on the bumper. Grab the short Torx bolt from the bag, feed it through the hole, and hand tighten on a nut. You should be able to angle in a closed or open-ended wrench, or use a deep well 11/32 inch socket to hold the nut while you drive the bolt. This is what that tab should look like when installed. Next up, let's grab an open-ended tab from bag B. The hardware to mount these brackets will be the silver T25 Torx. Slide the washer on the bolt and then feed the bolt through the bracket and mounting hole. These are a little trickier to stay put since the tab can slide forward. Try to keep it relatively straight and get the bracket tight, but also give it a little bit of play in case we need to make adjustments later. Here's how it should look for now, and then repeat the same step for the other B section. Now we're on to section C, and this is the only section to use the flat closed loop brackets. Grab a silver T25 Torx bolt and feed the washer on, and then through the tab and get it positioned and ready to fasten. Like with the previous section, this tab can move around a little bit while tightening, but try and keep it straight. Again, get it tight enough where it can't easily move, but leave some play in it for adjustments. Here's how mine looks, and the first few sections are going really well so far. Section D is another one of those open-ended clips, and this is a little bit more difficult than the first one. But it all starts with the silver T25 bolts and washer like before. This ledge that it rests on is a little bit of a balancing act to keep it all straight, but by now you're probably getting the hang of it. Leave a little bit of play in the section D and now we're good to go. Make sure that you're getting both the left and right sides of all of these done. Now on to section E, and we'll be ramping up the complexity with a bent bracket as well as an angled wedge. Start by placing a split washer in the center of the mounting hole. The angled wedge then goes on top, and it's important to have it positioned like how I have it here and have it angling down in this direction. I'll have another angle of this visible soon, but feed the bolt and washer through the tab and all of that through the angled wedge and hole. Also, it's important to note that the bend in the bracket is supposed to be angled upward. Tighten this mostly down, and let's check out another view of this. Again, it's important to have that tab angling upward and the wedge is pointed in the direction shown here. This is a daunting tab to install, but it's an important one to get correctly. Let's cool down for a second with one of the easiest areas to deal with, and that's the big brackets for section F. This goes right in the big area on the side. Install it as far back as possible with it touching the plastic divider in the center. Grab the short hex bolt and corresponding nut. Hand tighten it on and then grab your 5/32 inch hex driver as well as a 7/16 inch socket to get them fairly tight but with a little bit of play. Here's how section F looks for now. Section G is almost identical to section E. It has the same slightly angled bracket along with the wedge. Place the split washer in the center of the hole and then do the washer on the bolt through the tab and angled wedge. Due to its position, it's hard to get good footage of the wedge, but you want to have the thick part of it facing the bottom center of the bumper, and you want to have the thin part of the wedge facing the bolt from section F. Also, just like before, we want to have the bracket to be angling upward from the bend. Leave it ever so slightly loose, and here's how it should be looking right now. The last of the tabs to install are for section H. There are 6 of these T-shaped tabs. The center of these tabs will allow for the pointed end on the bumper to go through, and we're back to using those smaller T20 bolts and 11/32 inch nuts. You'll quickly find that this is a tight space to get the nut started. There's virtually no room to spin the nut, which is why the open-ended wrench will be needed for this step. Here's a quick view from behind. You can see that the open end will latch on there just fine, whereas the close end simply doesn't have enough room to work with. The open end will be your friend here for sure. Here's how my 6 tabs look, and everything's looking really good. And also, just a quick note, the center section does not get one of these tabs. We'll deal with that later. Now it's time to test fit the grill and see how it all lines up. Just place the grill into position, and please note that the lower edge sits on top of the plastic spikes on the bumper. Run one of the small bolts from hardware bag F through a plastic washer and feed it through the hole in the Grille Here. It's possible that minor adjustments are needed to get the bracket to line up, but it should be close, and then hand tighten on the nut and repeat for the other side. From bag A, get the plastic spacer out and place it between the grill and the bracket. I'll then grab the remaining long bolt and feed the washer on it, and then feed the bolt through the grill, the spacer, and the bracket. Get this loosely fastened on just so that the grill won't shift around a lot. At this point, it's obviously important to make sure that the center tab is straight and that the grill is centered up. Adjust any of the other brackets if needed so that the bolt will clearly pass through the grill and the tab. Once all of the tabs are lined up, then remove the grill and do the final tightening of all of the tab bolts in section A through G. The tabs from section H should have already been tightened, but if you didn't do that before, this is the time to get all of the tabs fully tightened down. Put the grill back on the tabs like we just did a little while ago and fully tighten down sections A and F. Now let's take a look at how section A would look when properly fastened down, and let's move on to section B. Grab the spacer from the bag and place it between the grill and the mounting tab. Then slide the washer on the bolt and feed the bolt through. Fasten the nut all the way and we're going to be left with a perfectly spaced grill. Section C is going to be more of the same. There's a spacer to slide behind the grill, as well as the same plastic washer and bolt combo. By now, you're likely getting the hang of all of this and flying through the install. Of course, all of this is being mirrored on the other side as well. And when it's all finished up, we're going to be left with a really solid connection to the bumper. Section D is a little tight to get into compared to the others, but it's manageable. There's another plastic washer plus bolt combo to feed through like we've done before, and it's also important to note that it can be easier to angle the wrench in from the side like what I'm showing here. Get this tightened down, and I'm going to skip showing the side profile of how this is spaced up and just move on to section E. So you might be thinking that this is a lot of brackets, nuts, bolts, and washers, and you're right. To do an install with no cutting or drilling, this is the best solution I could come up with. These new Tacomas have a complex bumper and a complex grille system. As a result, we needed to come up with a very precise solution to make this grille come to life. Back into the action. Let's finish up this install on the bottom row. These are some of the easiest to manage, but like with the tab install in this area, you may need to use an open end of the wrench to hold the nut. Also, in this area, there may be a very small gap on the bottom edge as we try to space this off ever so slightly in an effort to protect the paint on the truck. If there's too much of a gap, you can loosen the bolts on the grille and adjust it accordingly and re-tighten them all down, starting with the bottom row first to lock in the height. In bag H, there should be one short bolt left after you have the 6 tabbed areas fastened, and this is for the lower center bolt. It's really just there to complete the look and has no structural purpose for the installation. One last thing before we snap the bezel back on, if you move the lower bumper around and hear a noise like this, the far left and right bolt on section H are likely too tight, and you'll want to loosen those bolts up to release the tension. Okay, at this point the grille should be fully secured on and all spaced up from the frame evenly. All of the hard work that was put into this is looking like it's going to be paying off really soon. The bezel will go on top of the new grille, and before snapping that down, make sure all of the bezel mounting tabs are lining up properly in the bumper. You should get a satisfying click when you mount the bezel back into position. And let's flip this back around and reuse the 4 screws that were holding the bezel to the bumper. When driving these screws back in, you might also hear another click or two from the bezel clips if they were not fully pushed in before. Of course, there are other components to connect up to the bumper, but the grille portion should be done now. Here's a final shot at how this looks off of the truck, and here's a picture of how one of these slotted designs will look installed. Check out our website for additional installed pictures, as well as updated patterns and options such as a front camera adapter or lighting. Also, just a quick note, if your bezel has some extra plastic on the back that wasn't trimmed off from the factory from plastic injection molding points, you may be getting hard contact on the new grille, typically in the upper corners. If that is the case, you may need to sand down the back of the bezel a little bit to relieve that stress point. Well, we've put a lot of hard work into bringing this grille to life, and I hope you liked it. If you can subscribe to the channel or give me a like on this video, that'll help me out quite a bit. If you have any questions about this install, let me know, and thanks for watching.